month's Leadership Live, where we dive in deep with today's top MedTech leaders, allowing you the chance to learn from the best. Leadership Live starts now.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Leadership Live. And I'm absolutely excited to have Shane Kelly here with us, who is the CEO of North America for Thuasne. If you guys don't know Thuasne, what's really kind of incredible company, started in France, a French company, 176 years old, 6 generations, female-led, and doing some really incredible things under Shane's leadership in North America. But I'm not going to steal his thunder. Shane, I've gotten a chance to know you over the years, and we spent a lot of time together, but people here don't know you as well. And of course, they might not know Thuasne. So tell us a little bit about both. Could you, Shane?
Absolutely. Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning, Joe. Looking forward to this. So, I started in the industry. I got very lucky. My mother, actually, who's been a nurse for the past 60 years, she's actually still working in the industry for Ortho Arizona out here. She's not in surgery anymore. Little too much for her tiny little figure, but she's still working in the industry. She's the one that got me in about 30 years ago. I started with a company called Sutter Corporation, setting up CPMs in patients' homes all across the valley here in Arizona, and just decided it was a fantastic industry. I think I lucked out, to be very honest, getting into it, and have stayed in ever since. I've been, with a number of the big players within the industry, and worked in orthopedics and spine, med device, mostly, bone growth stimulation, orthopedic braces, lymphology, compression, those types of things. But it's been a pleasure for me to be working here at Thuasne for almost 5 years, actually, just coming up on about 5 years with the company. And great family-owned business, as you mentioned before, 176 years old. The current CEO, Delphine Henton, is the 6th generation CEO of the business. Her mother ran the business for over 30 years, and then she took the helm. And we've got about 2,600 employees globally, with about 600 of those people in North America. So we have a fairly large footprint here in North America, and we pretty much have two main divisions of our business. We have our core, what we call the orthotics side of the business, which is sort of the rigid bracing, those types of things. And then we acquired actually another pretty old business, a business called KnitRight, and it just celebrated its 100th anniversary last year, based out of Kansas City, and they do O&P textiles and compression. So that's a little bit closer to the core of what Thuasne has done historically with medical textiles. But those are kind of the two arms of the business, the orthotics and then the lymphology and the compression. So it's been an exciting time of change here at Thuasne, but a great place for me to be. So
absolutely. That's great. Well, guys, if you're listening, I'm going to be asking a few questions, but at the end, you're going to get a chance to ask Shane some questions. So if you have a question throughout this, just post it, and we'll pull those up at the end of this conversation. But you mentioned, Shane, the medical device is a great industry to be in, and it's a unique industry, and I'm happy to be in it myself. But what do you think makes a great leader in this space?
I think, especially these days, this has always been an important thing, but I think emotional intelligence is probably one of the key things that a leader needs to possess. And there's lots of aspects to emotional intelligence, but I think maybe the most important one is empathy. Being able to really empathize with people, your team, in particular. So I just think that it's an interesting time that we live in, and if you've got sort of a low EQ, you're not going to go very far. So to me, I think that's an important attribute. Of course, your team at the end of the day is always key, right? So, to me, I've always been an advocate of surrounding yourself with the best possible people that you can. And whenever possible, because, the reality is you're just not good at everything, right?
Yeah.
I'm not an operations guy, as an example. that's not where I cut. That's not the path that I followed, right, to get in the seat that I am currently. So, for me, it's all about surrounding yourself with people that are as good and ideally better, right, than you are in each of the areas that they've got responsibility for, because you can't do it by yourself. You've got to do it with your team. And so I think that's a key. Of course, the fundamentals are important too, right? You have to be a good steward from a financial standpoint. Being able to manage cash flow, creating a vision and noble purpose, if you will, for your team, and making sure that everybody is clear, right, on what that noble purpose is and where you're headed as an organization. And then I think probably the final thing in my mind would be change management, right? Before we started here today, we were talking about AI, and obviously that's radically changing the world. I think, unless you're keeping up on those things and looking to continuously improve, to adapt, to change, you're going to get left behind. And so it's probably a combination of those things in my mind.
That makes sense.
Other elements as well, but those are probably the most important.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, what I think is what's interesting is you talked about knowing yourself and having the right people around you to augment where you're not, having people smarter than yourself, but being able to connect with them, have really EQ to be able to create that connection, that drive that helps you set that vision. And if you have the right vision, you have the right connection, they're more adapt to change, right? That fear is taken away and you really have that leadership. I think there's some good points for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I'm sure you've always done things 100% correct.
I wish. Yeah.
Right. So what are a couple of those lessons that, you might have learned the hard way that, you might want to share so other people might not step on that same landmine?
We probably could spend the entire time just talking about this topic.
Yeah. Myself included.
Look, I mean, if my dad used to always say, if you don't fall, if you don't fail, you're not trying hard enough, right?
Right.
So, there's always lessons to be learned in life. Probably the most recent lesson I would say that I learned the hard way was opening up my own business. So I actually left orthopedics for 5 years. And I had decided, I always had a dream of opening up my own business and, being on my own and making all my own decisions. And so I decided to exit the industry for a period of time. And I opened up an eco-friendly dry cleaning business here in Scottsdale. That's a whole, why I did that is a whole other story for another day. But nonetheless, I did it. And ultimately, after 5 years, I ended up deciding to exit that business, and I was fortunate to be able to sell it. But I think the lesson that I learned there, right, is owning your business and running your own business versus running a business that's owned by somebody else is very different.
Yeah. Right.
When it's your own money, when it's your own cash, when it's your own debt. It's very, very different than when you're using somebody else's money. So I learned a ton. It was a great time. I got off the road, which was a blessing. My kids were sort of like, in their middle teenage years. So it was at least two of them where it was a good time to sort of be off the road, more present in their life. But I think that was an important lesson. There have been lots of other ones. I can think back to 20 years ago. I actually worked when you and I both worked for DonJoy, and I had worked for a company that was acquired by DonJoy back in 2003, I think it was, and I was reporting directly to Les Cross, and I stayed for too short of a period of time. I actually ended up leaving after a year, and so to me it was a good lesson. 20 years ago, maybe I was I didn't know what I didn't know, right, at that time. And I think I would have been better served to stay and be mentored by Les for a longer period of time. But I decided to make a move, and that was probably a good lesson as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of funny. Both of those examples and lessons are probably similar in the fact that there's that grass is green or shiny up, on the other side, and sometimes you get over there and you realize, wait a second. I was actually in a good place.
Yeah, actually, that grass was pretty. That was pretty green grass.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's good. Just, really having that concept as you're looking for opportunities and things as people are out there. Now, obviously you mentioned earlier about having a great team, right? And developing that team. So having those high performers and people on your team, how have you found the best way to develop them or seen others do it? What suggestions do you have?
I think developing high performers is always something we're looking at. We call them hypos within our organization, and we've actually been using something called a 9-box exercise to help us to. You're probably familiar with it.
Oh, absolutely.
To develop the burgeoning superstars within the company. So we're always looking at those kinds of things. I think the biggest thing is, when you identify them, is to stretch them, right, and to put opportunities in their hands. Another thing my father used to always tell me was that if you're competing, you always want to compete against somebody that's better than you, right? Because you're not going to learn from somebody that's not as good as you at tennis or football or whatever sport you're playing. So I think the biggest thing is provide, once you identify these people, to provide them with opportunities to sort of stretch them reasonably. You don't want to stretch them so much that they break. And then, you just have to be aware of sort of where they are. I've always been sort of a big Ken Blanchard situational leadership guy. And so, I'm not always perfect at it, but you have to recognize, where they are from a development standpoint on that project or that task that you have them working on, and make sure that, if you need to be coaching them versus supporting them versus delegating, you're doing that in the right way. So this is probably one of the things in my mind that's the most important, job of mine, is to sort of constantly be looking at, who are those hypos that can move up, that can advance, right? That can be the future leaders within the organization. And we've got some really good folks.
That's great. Yeah, that's some great examples. What I heard you say a little bit is, whether it's 9-box, whether it's another tool, is the first thing a lot of companies that I see not happening is actually identify.
Yeah.
Who, they might know it intrinsically, but to actually identify these are our high performers. And then with that, give them challenges, stretch them so they can grow, but realize just because they were great at where they currently are, if you're using situational leadership, you might need to now be back to an S1, for Ken Blanchard, and giving them high support while you're stretching them, so they can really get into that next level and growth. So I think that's a great combination. Identify, develop, give them at the level where they are at that situation. And that's good. I love that. I love that example. Some good, definitely good methodology. And I agree with you that those high performers at 20% produces 80% of the results,
Absolutely.
happens in a lot of organizations. So identifying them and supporting them is crucial. And then obviously this is near and dear to my heart. How do you find them, right? And how do you evaluate who will be those hypos in the future as you're bringing them on board? What have you found worked for you now and in the past?
The best thing for me is just talking with the people, staying very close to the people. The higher up you go in the organization, they always say, right, being CEO is the loneliest job in the company, because you don't really have any peers, right, within your organization, and people might be reluctant to talk to you unless you do have a high level of emotional intelligence and are a good communicator and are empathetic. And so, for me, I really make a point of trying to talk to people at any level within the company. Like I said before, we have 600 people across six sites now. We just acquired another business with 2 more sites. So it was 4, now 6. Anytime I visit all these locations, I'm always making time to go out on the floor and meet with people. Yeah. I go out, I meet with the hourly workers, I'm meeting with, with our exempt folks. I do what we call coffee with Shane at the various sites, where I'll sort of pull in a cross-functional group of people, different departments, different levels within an organization, and we'll talk. People know that I frequently will sort of tap individuals and bring them to lunch, with a one-on-one randomly. And my direct reports know, they just kind of know me, and they know that, hey, don't be surprised if I grab one of your people and meet with them or take them to lunch or what have you. It's not because I don't trust you and because I'm trying to check up on you. It's because I want to talk with the people deep in the organization and find out what they're thinking. I want to learn about them, right? And to me, it's been the way that I've best been able to identify the hypos in the organization. You know, like, for example, I have a guy now that I met when I was back at Aspen Medical. I don't even know how many years ago now, I guess 14 years ago. He was a product manager at the time. And I knew that this gentleman was going to be, you know, he was a hypo, right? Well, he's now my chief commercial officer. And that was because I got to know, you know, Derek, and ultimately he went down a different path and I went down a different path. But here we are, you know, back together. So I think it's really important for, you know, whether you're the CEO or any kind of leader in the organization, talking with your people, getting to know your people is really critical.
Yeah. And, you know, and that sounds really nice to say, right? To do that, to take the time to have lunch, to do the coffee with Shane. But you juxtapose that, you have 4 conference calls in the morning, a board meeting to prep for, you know, a KOL coming in. So, you know, it's really that what I heard you say is really just taking that as a priority and taking the time to listen and be connected. And not only helps you with the current organization who's there, but also maybe later on, right? You made the connection 14 years ago that now is the driving the commercial change for your organization, right? But if you wouldn't have taken that time, you wouldn't have not known that. So it's I think it's some great value.
You have to build it into your day.
Yeah.
It has to be a priority, because if you don't make it a priority, you won't do it. And so I just make it a daily priority, whether I'm in my home office and I'm calling a sales rep out in the field, or I'm in one of our locations and I'm meeting with somebody. So,
yeah, that's great. Great point. Everyone listening, if you have some questions, please just post it below or the side, however it's set it on your screen. Just post a question. We're going to pull those in at the end of this conversation. But I have a question on, there's a lot of people listening now that they're not leaders, but they are aspiring to be leaders. For those individuals, what suggestions do you give them?
You know, don't be afraid to take a chance, right? Be willing to take on new responsibilities, you know, new projects. Put yourself forward, right, and be willing to do things that maybe others, you know, aren't willing to do. And I think, you know, another important thing is don't be afraid to make mistakes, because we all do, we all will. So I think, you know, you have to be willing to kind of put your neck on a line, be visible, be positive, be a team player, and you know, take the chance. So right. If you don't communicate, you know, it's managing your manager, right? So if you don't communicate what your you know, what your ambitions are to your manager and to other people in the company, they may not find you, right? I mean, you can spend all the time that you want trying to find the hypos out there, but I'll give you an example. We have a young woman in our organization. She's actually a dreamer. She's very quiet. She's an extremely quiet person. She's been with us now for, gosh, I think close to 10 years now. She's a hypo. We were able to identify that she was a hypo, but it wasn't because, you know, she kind of came to us and said, you know, hey, look at me. I want to take on additional responsibilities, because she was a very, very shy, quiet person, but she's kind of coming out of her shell. So, you know, it was a good example, I think, you know, of needing to do those types of things to identify those people and rise within the organization.
No, I think you give some great examples, you know, great suggestions. I mean, you know, first thing I heard from you really is it's kind of that classic adage, you know, a ship in a harbor is safe, but it's never going to reach its destination. So you've got to take a risk. You got to put yourself out there to do it. And part of that is making sure that leadership knows what your destination is, where you're trying to get, where you're trying to go. So they can, because I find if you're in the right organization, organizations see themselves as simply a vehicle to help people further their objectives, and if they, and a lot of organizations think that way. So feel free to, make sure they know what it is. So I think it's some good examples, and hopefully you're a great organization that even if they don't raise their hand, you're still recognizing greatness and can pull them up, right? So it's about being the right team as well. I'm going to ask one last question, but if there's any other questions, we're going to move to some questions from the FloodGate family. So post those below here shortly. But this was the last question I will ask, one of my just fun ones and favorite ones. Who's your favorite superhero and why?
My favorite superhero. Well, as a kid, I used to always like Hong Kong Phooey. That probably really ages me.
I have not heard that guy. That was a dog, wasn't it?
He was
a dog that knew.
He was a janitor. Yeah, he was a janitor.
Yeah. And janitor dog. Yeah, I forgot.
Not my favorite superhero, but as a kid, I liked Hong Kong Phooey. The serious answer, I think, is maybe a cross between like Black Panther and Iron Man.
Yeah.
Black Panther, I think I've always admired and liked just because, he's got a bunch of superhuman abilities and amazing intelligence, but he's somebody, who has a noble purpose, right? I mean, he's a superhero that I think most people would want to be, right? Because he's just a good guy.
Yeah.
Tony Stark, I've always been really fascinated by innovators. I'm good at a lot of things, but I wouldn't consider myself to be, a quote unquote innovator. So I've always been envious, I would say, of those incredible innovator people like, Elon Musk. I'm reading a biography on Elon Musk right now. So I'd say it's a cross between maybe, Iron Man and Black Panther.
Right. No, that's good. I like that combination of a noble purpose with great innovation, right? Is kind of what drives you, So that's a good suggestions here. So, here's a question from Tio. Are there areas personally where you feel you can improve more as a leader? So this is getting close. And what point do you feel confident that your ability? Did you feel confident in your ability to lead? So really, two questions from Tio there.
Oh yeah, there's lots of areas where I feel like I can improve as a leader. One of my favorite books actually is Good to Great, which I think pretty much everybody has heard of and read. And I like sort of the one of the concepts in there, about level 5 leadership and the idea of glass either being, a mirror or a window, right? And the older I've gotten, I would say the more reflective I've gotten, the more self-reflection that I do. Maybe part of that just comes with age and time. I'm not really sure. But I do a lot of self-reflection, and I'm always kind of questioning, what could I do better, as a leader. The second part of the question, when did I feel confident in my ability to lead? It's hard to say. I mean, I probably noticed when I was younger that I had, I had like a propensity, right, to be a leader when I was, in high school, let's say. I'm not sure that there ever, was like a moment in time where I was like, I'm a confident leader. And not what you're asking specifically. It probably wavers, there day by day, year by year, position by position. Maybe the confidence level is higher and maybe the confidence level is lower. I think it's a really, really great question. But, in general, I think most leaders are confident people. You just have to avoid being a cocky leader. I don't think that's a good thing.
No.
But I think I appreciate the questions there. Those are good ones.
Yeah, no, those are some good questions. I think of that as you have to have that confidence, but confident humility. And, I've talked to several leaders and I noticed it myself. Sometimes you feel like, the quote unquote fraud, you got to fake it till you make it. Sometimes, when that first get tapped.
That's true.
That is definitely true, right? But be honest about it and be authentic about it. Have another good question. Well, first, Abel's just well said, Shane. There, long road ahead. So just a little comment from him. Thanks, and then Danny, what's that? Sorry.
I know Abel's. I was just saying I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, good. Here's a good question from Jane. Do you believe people are natural born leaders, or is it a learned skill?
Oh, I think it's a bit of both. I think with anything in life, a bit of it is genetics, and a bit of it is the environment, right? So, you're born with X, and then how that evolves over time is very dependent upon the family that you're raised in, and the environment that you're raised in, and what you do, right? The decisions that you make in life. I would say that most of it is learned, though. You're born with a certain amount, but over time, most of it is learned. I've certainly changed a lot as a leader over the years. I wish that I knew at 30, what I now know at 54. So
right. No, makes total sense. Makes total sense. Last question from the FloodGate family at this point is Sarah's asking, how do you balance short-term pressures and long-term goals? I mean, talk about something you can write books on, right? So how do you balance that urgent with important?
Well, it's just prioritization, right? At the end of the day, you have to have. I actually am always looking at sort of what do I need to do today. There's always sort of that list of things that needs to be accomplished today. But then I'm always sort of keeping that. And I use tech for all this. It used to all be on pieces of paper, but now it's all done. Using different kinds of software and things like that. I never lose sight of the long-term goals. As a matter of fact, I read. I don't even know who it was that made this comment, but they had done a study of the most successful people in the world and sort of a commonality between those folks. And one of the commonalities was that they wrote down and reviewed every single day all of their long-term goals. So that's something that I do. And I just, I just sort of continue to persistently follow and review those every day and make sure that I'm trying to make, progress, even if it's just baby steps towards achieving the long-term goals. And then the short term, if you're working in the urgent and important box all the time, then you're probably not doing the right things. You have to try and keep yourself in the important and non-urgent box. Every once in a while, you get pulled into that urgent box, but you want to try and stay out of it. So,
yeah, awesome. Well, one last comment, and I think it's a perfect one that I will also echo. Not sure who said, but it was a nice job, Shane. So thank you. We've had thanks for sharing, providing the knowledge that you've gained over the years. So other people can have, as you said, know what they know at 30 that you know at 54. You've imparted some of that wisdom to them. So thank you for taking the time and doing that, impacting the people here. Our mission is to improve lives, and this is just one of the ways we love to do it. So thank you for helping us achieve that mission. And thank you everyone who attended this time's Leadership Live.
Thanks to you, Joe. Appreciate being able to participate very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.